Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro on a Friday. Glad you could join us. I would imagine many of us don't have any big plans this weekend as we're all dealing with the same in this coronavirus pandemic. Always like hearing from politicians throughout. You know, we had George Chanos on, the former Nevada Attorney General, and always love having Nevada Congresswoman Dina Titus, who joins us right now on the line. Congresswoman Titus, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, thank you. I didn't realize Donald Trump was a big fan of your show until I just heard that.
Apparently he is, yeah. Apparently he is. That would be a shock to me, too, because I criticize him every single day, Dina.
I better be more careful about the things I say.
No, you don't need to be careful on this show at all, Congresswoman. I want to ask you this first question because I think it's an important one. You know, we had Oscar Goodman on the show yesterday, and as you know, Carolyn Goodman, the mayor of Las Vegas, is not necessarily seeing eye to eye with Governor Steve Sisolak. And she's had some choice words about his decisions to shut down the Strip. And I wanted to ask you about that because, you know, when you hear of the governor, saying one thing, and by the way, I commend Governor Sisolak. I think he's done a good job. That's just my opinion. And then you hear Mayor Goodman saying something completely different. It gets people confused. I think it's dangerous. It gets people angry. What do you make of that, of Mayor Goodman's comments and the differences that she and Steve Sisolak have?
Well, it is unfortunate, and you're right. It's the information that's contradictory that causes people to be scared and angry, and that's one of my criticisms of the Trump administration. From day to day, they keep switching their position. Here at home, the governor had to make a very tough decision when he closed down the economy. He did not come by that lightly. I think it was through a lot of advice from the scientific community, the healthcare community, and a lot of prayers. You know, he's a very religious man. He goes to Mass every morning. So he didn't make that decision lightly. And, everybody is frustrated. You heard him. He was frustrated. But we've got to kind of put that aside and look at what's good in the long term. I believe that our economy is certainly hurting very bad now. If you go down the Strip, which is my district, and see things all shut down, it's like a Twilight Zone movie. Who could have ever imagined it? But all the signs say if we do this now, if we sacrifice now, we'll get over this sooner and we'll be able to come back faster. And so I support the governor in what he's been doing.
As I do as well, and I tend to agree with you. What do you make? You know, Dina, we get calls from people every day that think that everything should be reopened tomorrow. As you know, there have been people that have been protesting throughout the country, many of whom were in Michigan. There were people on the Las Vegas Strip the other day that don't agree with Steve Sisolak's, 10 or more, ban. Like I said, I agree with Steve Sisolak. I'm on his side on this one. What would you say to those people and some of your constituents that disagree with the governor? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that, they're kind of falling into the Donald Trump trap. Let's get things open now because he's so worried about the state of the economy and his own reelection. He's not listening to the scientists standing right there on the stage with him. Dr. Fauci has certainly been much more conservative about opening up things and stopping the social distancing and the hand washing and all that. Everything's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. So I think that when people do that, they're not only endangering themselves, but they're endangering their family, their friends, people on the street, and making it possible that you'll get another spike, more illness, more death, and it'll be even longer before the economy can come back.
You mentioned how there's a lot of economic damage that the economy is suffering in Nevada right now. Right now, there's roughly 300 to 400,000 people that have filed for unemployment that are considered unemployed. How high do you think that number gets, and do you think we hit 25, 30% for unemployment in Las Vegas, or where do you think that number ends up, Dina?
Well, that's the figure that I've heard, that it could go as high as 30%. And put that in perspective, during the recession that we had about 8 or so years ago, Nevada was the worst in the country for unemployment, and that was about 15%. And so that's one of the reasons why in the last package, the CARES package that Congress passed, so much emphasis was put on providing unemployment. We extended the length of time you can get unemployment. We added $600 from the federal government to supplement your state unemployment. And we expanded the pool to also include the gig economy, independent contractors. You know, in Las Vegas, we have a lot of Uber drivers, entertainers who work on contract, new start companies that are high tech. And so now they can be included. And I think that unemployment is really kind of the long-term way to save people, because it keeps them going until things can open up. The state has just been overwhelmed by people applying. I think you said 300,000. They had more in just a couple of weeks than they had in the last 2 years combined. They have there was some money in the federal bill to hire more folks, get more resources. They have done that. I think they've tripled the size of the unemployment office, and now they've set up a system where it's better to apply on a certain day if you have a certain letter of the alphabet for your last name, and also online. We get hundreds of calls a day from people just asking for help, not knowing where to go, what they're entitled to, and how to apply for it.
Congresswoman Dina Titus joining us, Nevada Congresswoman. Dina, I have to ask you some breaking news that is very disturbing to me. And I know this has nothing to do with Nevada, but it is still our country, and it could, in my opinion, this could put everybody's lives at risk. Apparently, DeSantis out there in Florida just decided to officially reopen the beaches. I am dumbfounded by this. What is your first reaction to this? I find it to be extremely irresponsible.
Well, so do I. He's a big Trump supporter. Remember that. And also, took him a long time to even close the beaches to start with. You found a lot of people who went for spring break who thought, well, I'm young and healthy, this won't bother me, coming back with the coronavirus and then giving it to their grandparents. You know, just because you open something up doesn't mean that people should go. That's like Las Vegas. We will open up gradually, but people have to feel in a holiday spirit and have money in their pocket. So we will be slower to get back up on our feet than some places. But I hope that the majority of people have enough sense not to go to the beach just because DeSantis says it's okay.
I hope you're right.
Yeah,
I know. I hope you're right, but you never know. There are people out there that are going to do what they're going to do, and I think it's very dangerous. I want to ask you a two-part question here. First of all, what do you think your constituents, the ones that are calling you, what do you think people need the most right now, and what do you think Congress can do to help them?
Well, the main things they're calling about are the unemployment. That's good for the longer term. So that helps with all the people who are out of a job, at least temporarily. Second, they're calling about the one-time payment check. That's $1,200 that you're entitled to if you make less than $75,000 a year. That's a one-time payment. We'd like to get some more in the next bill, but at least that's a little something that tides you over. And the third thing are small businesses who are calling about getting some of the federal, they call it a loan, but you don't have to pay it back, so it's really a grant if you use the money to pay payroll, mortgage, rent, or utilities. So many small businesses applied for that, and there are a lot of them here in Las Vegas that has run out of money. So even as we speak, we're trying to get some additional funds put into that program through another bill in Congress. And you think about my district, we've got the state's largest employer, MGM Grand, and the smallest employer, a taco truck. So small businesses really are ancillary supporters to those big casinos.
Right. Do you think that PPP, that Paycheck Protection Program, do you think the additional $250 billion, because it's definitely necessary at this point, do you think something gets done? Do you think that the two members of Congress come to an agreement and pass this bill eventually?
I think they will, and I think it'll be sooner rather than later. The argument is whether you just pass a bill to include more money for that program, or while you're at it, you include more money for things like food stamps and additional funding for people beyond the $1,200. but something will be done. They're negotiating that right now, and the president supports increasing the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses.
Sure.
So this is something that will pass in one form or another pretty soon.
Sure.
And
well,
I
Congresswoman,
had just yesterday a business call me saying they got all the paperwork in, they did all the right things. They're eligible. It's just the bank doesn't have any more money because there's been such a run on it. So many small businesses need it.
So you told us a couple times last time we talked, you said that you're riding with Biden. Who do you think that Joe Biden is going to nominate for his vice president?
Well, there are so many good choices out there. I don't have the inside scoop on that, but I know he is vetting a number of people. He has said that he'd like to have a woman, and so I'm pretty confident it'll be the first woman vice president running with him. There are a number of women who were running themselves who have now endorsed him, whether you're talking about Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar. The governor of Michigan has been getting a lot of play. Stacey Abrams from Georgia, who ran for governor and lost because she felt like they had stolen a lot of the votes there or prevented people from voting. So it's an embarrassment of riches.
I have to go back to Donald Trump. I know you're about as big a fan of Donald Trump as I am, Congresswoman, so I have to ask you about some of his press conferences. I have criticized him almost on a daily basis for his briefings, and it appears to me that he wants to be congratulated for everything, and it's almost like a campaign rally for him, and he's talking about the ratings that he is receiving. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, as you know, many people are struggling in this country, and they want to hear the news. Do you think it's dangerous for the media to play some of these press conferences? Because my take is I would rather hear from the doctors like a Dr. Fauci, even the vice president. I'd rather have him up there. And I just feel like President Trump is using this opportunity not to help the American people, but to help himself.
Well, that's right. You know, he can't do those big rallies that he enjoys so much because of the shutdown. So he's just trying to go out there and use these press conferences to, I think, play to his base. One day he'll say one thing like he did just the other day where he said the president has total power. I'm totally in charge. I will make the decision. Then some of his advisors told him, no, that's not what the Constitution says. You better back off of that. So his latest thing is, well, I'm going to allow the governors to make their own decision. You just can't trust them. It's just, and that just fuels problems. He doesn't listen to the scientists. He uses those to criticize Democrats, to throw out their fake numbers about what a great job he's doing. It's half of it's not true, and the other half is dangerous because it's causing people to, I think, do the wrong thing. Meantime, I believe Joe Biden is looking very presidential. He is hunkered down, following the scientific rules at home like everybody else, and talking about real plans to help us get out of this, not making up stuff like Trump is.
Yeah, no, I heard Joe Biden on CNN Town Hall yesterday, and I actually did think he did a great job, and he sounded presidential yesterday. I have to ask you one more big loaded question here in regards. It'll be a tough question for you to answer. I don't think anybody has the answer to it, but you hear all these rumors, right, Congresswoman? When is the Strip going to open? Are they going to open the local casinos first? Are they going to keep the Strip closed for 3 or 4 months? Can you see a scenario where Governor Sisolak, and I know I'm not big into hypotheticals, I'm sure you're not either, but can you see a scenario where in 3 or 4 months from now, the Strip might still be closed, but yet local casinos could be open and these local businesses could be open? Or do you see that not being a possibility and it's going to be all or nothing? What do you know about that?
Well, I get briefed by the governor and his team at least once a week. I've got a briefing this afternoon by the convention authority to hear kind of what they're saying. I don't believe anybody wants to set a date because once you do, then you're bound to that, or else you just have to ignore it like Donald Trump did the Easter date. Right. I believe that the science will dictate when we open up. And I think you kind of hit on it. It wouldn't surprise me to see a kind of a gradual opening. And it might not be the locals versus the Strip. It might be MGM opens one property instead of all of its properties, or Wynn opens one, something like that. I think they're working on how we're going to reopen, and nobody's really said what that's going to be. anytime the economy is hit hard, Las Vegas is hit the hardest because, as I said before, people need to get money in their pocket to come on holiday, so there's a little lag time. But that's one of the reasons that as the chair of both the Gaming Caucus and the Travel and Tourism Caucus, we made sure that gaming was not excluded from the recovery bill like it's been done in the past, like after Katrina.
Sure. Now, 99.9% more than the general population, so I have to ask you one more question. You're in these briefings. What do you think the chances are? I mean, I've said I don't think we're going to open up May 1st, but since you're in these briefings, and I know you said you have another one this afternoon, is there any chance that we reopen May 1st? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so. I think we want to be cautious. We don't want to cause another spike. We flattened that curve, and that's a good sign. And we have hospital bed capacity and ventilators, but you certainly don't want to risk changing that trend. Congress is not going back until May the 4th at the earliest. Meantime, we're talking about voting by proxy. We're having all kinds of telephone town halls. We're having committee hearings over the phone, but there's no plan for Congress to go back until May 4th at the earliest. So I don't really see that happening.
Yes, sadly, I agree with you, and that's what I've heard from other politicians as well. Congresswoman Dina Titus, we always appreciate your honesty and you coming on this program. A great service you're providing to our listeners. Hopefully we can have you on again soon. Really do appreciate you. Keep up the good work, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. Call me anytime.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thanks a lot,
that
Dina.
means a lot. We really appreciate that. Congresswoman Dina Titus taking time out of her day to talk to us. That's the latest information, folks. We just gave you the latest information from a congresswoman who is in these briefings every week with the governor. And she just told us she doesn't think there's much of a chance that we're going to be opening up on May 1st. She just told us, yeah, there's a possibility that down the road an MGM might open one property here and there. But it sounded to me, if you were listening to that interview, and she has the latest information, the inside scoop, we're not opening up on May 1st. It's not going to happen.
I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, well, you can think it's a mistake. I'm just giving the information to our listeners.
I agree.
Mistake or not, that's the tone that she gave us, and we appreciate her joining us on the Vegas.